Hello, everyone, and welcome to our pre-finale roundtable with our cast that have been eliminated since the merge. We have with us Jeff, Matt, Chelsea, Bartley, Sarah, and Maya, who are all here to talk a little bit about their experience during Outlast 2023, give you some insight into maybe some of the things we didn't see in the episodes, and yeah, just reflect a little bit and relive all the magic. So thank you all so much for being with us tonight. I'm excited to reconnect with all of you and have some lively discussion. Hopefully you all watched the previous roundtable. There were some good, some fun tidbits that we learned that we didn't get to see in the episode. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about the pre-merge, but we'll mostly focus on the merge aspects. But I'll kind of jump right in with some of the merge questions. So we'll just do a quick roundtable, quick go around the table to say kind of what you were feeling in those moments when you arrived, and what did you come into the game with in terms of experience or maybe a strategy you thought of. And I'm just going to go in the order of my screen, so I'll start with Bartley. You got to unmute though. Don't forget.
It was definitely a whirlwind when I first arrived. I was the last one to arrive for Nebby. And so I literally was like getting out of the car and being told to start walking down the path. And I think that had me a little bit frazzled, and that's probably a reason why I missed that spool throw. But I also was like a little bit buzzed because I stopped and got a drink with my production friend on the way there. So as far as strategy, I've put a lot of ORGs in the past. And so I was just trying to be really friendly and make people not want to target me out of the gate. And clearly I didn't make enough alliances at the beginning. And we saw how that played out. So
we'll get to all that. Matt, how about you? What was your kind of initial thoughts coming into the game?
I stayed at a hotel the night before and I ate so much free breakfast. I was trying to like carb load and calorie load. And then I was actually the second person to arrive for Nebby. Meg was the first. And I remember someone in production like, hey, you all can move down. And to Meg, I was like, no, be at the front, like make eye contact with everyone as they come in, even though we're not supposed to look at them. So that was I believe in like first impressions, just are everything. So I was trying to make good first impressions from the get-go. That was my strategy. Yeah.
I think Justin, you're muted.
So awkward. Now I'm the one. Awkward. Chelsea, how about for you?
I think my strategy was sort of similar to what Matt just mentioned, where coming in, I'm sort of aware that I'm more of an introverted person. And so I feel like I wanted to try and compensate for that and like be as social as I could be and just, be friendly, help out at camp, but somewhat fly under the radar at the same time, like do well enough in challenges to help my tribe, but don't overperform and also don't underperform. So it was sort of like a balancing act from the get-go was what I was focusing on. And then the other big part was I went in with this mindset of wanting to be loyal. Like that was really important to me, that I was like very intentional. If I told someone I wouldn't vote for them, or for the most part, as best as I could, unless they like betrayed me first, I was like, loyalty, that's what I want to aim for this time.
Sarah, how about you?
Well, I don't remember much of the day before coming, but I remember getting there. I was like, wow, so official. Everybody's not told not to face each other. And like that felt a little intimidating to me because I haven't had that happen in previous games before. But I think also strategy for me is I usually want to be more villainous and kind of not give a fuck. But this time I wanted to play more hero. So that kind of went in there wanting to be like, I just want to make people like me so they don't want to vote me out. That's what I thought.
Maya, how about for you?
So coming in similar to Bartley, I was the last person of my tribe. I was last to get there for POTA. And coming in, I definitely was so worried about my threat level because in my previous games, I had the opposite effect where I got pretty far and then I got end game somewhere between 8 and 5 because people were scared to take me to the end. So I was just really paranoid about coming off the right way. And so I lied about a lot of things to diminish my threat level. And you know what? Looking back, I probably didn't need to do all that because I was 22. So I didn't need to do all that. But yeah, that was definitely on my mind the most, and also trying to play a very loyal game as well.
Cool. Unfortunately, we have lost Jeff for a moment or two. He is traveling for the eclipse that is today. We're recording this on Monday, which was the eclipse day, and he was traveling for that. So hopefully we'll get him back. Oh, wait. I think we just got him back. So Jeff, I'm just going to ask, hopefully you can hear me, and I'll put you onto the stage in just a second, but hopefully you can hear this. We're just kind of talking about what your first impressions were when you came to the game, if you had any strategy going.
Yeah. Hi, Justin. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was just trying to make some early connections in the very beginning, make some eye contact with folks. And the people that I saw early on, like even Rachel coming in, it's funny how perception was so different for all of us. So for me, I thought, oh, that's someone that I saw, before the game even started, so we could connect and have an early bond. And for Rachel, that was like, oh, he drives a Tesla, so I want nothing to do with him. So that was always pretty funny. But I just, off the bat, tried to keep it light and not jump right into gameplay too hard, but wanted to form some bonds and not be too quiet or too loud. So there were definitely some people that I kind of seeked out and made some early alliances with, and other people were good at that too. So, Matt came over pretty early because him and Peter just happened to be in the same spot and was like, hey, alliance. And, I always wanted to be blue strong, just because from the very beginning I was thinking kind of long game, and I needed strong alliances if I needed to survive at all in the merge, which I clearly didn't. But so I was just thinking about long-term alliances and trying to meet everyone on the tribe.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. And I'll also just say, as your host, I did just get a new puppy today. So if you see me looking down a lot or looking around, it's because I'm trying to make sure the puppy I can see them and they're not peeing on the floor. Right now he's sleeping, so we're in a good shape. Awesome. So we'll just do a quick round of specific questions around some things that happened in the pre-merge. So I'll start with Jeff. Hopefully you're still there, Jeff. I'll bring you back on. So I wanted to get your thoughts on selecting the idol when you were at the Outlast outpost in the very beginning, right? So to remind viewers, we had a little mini challenge right when the tribes met to toss a sandbag on a spool, and then players went in order, selecting items that could make their camp life better or could benefit them individually. I think, Jeff, you were third in the order, if that's right. And you did make, I think, a very bold move in taking the individual idol in that moment. So I'm just curious what your thoughts were about doing that. And, obviously we see you use the idol at some point, but do you have any regrets about doing that? Would you have done anything differently, I guess?
To pull the idol, I made that decision. I was there to play, and there was still a lot of items there. I kind of thought about it, and I figured I would try to get away with it, but I was still kind of thinking long game at that point, even though it was the beginning. And I knew that, again, I was thinking post-merge, and I really needed strong alliances at that point, because I knew I'd be a physical threat, and I also needed some kinds of advantages. And, obviously it didn't get used the right way, but I think I'm happy with what I did there by choosing the idol. Maybe I could have shared that with a couple alliances early on just to build more trust instead of doing it later. But I felt even in the game that I mostly got away without people knowing that I had it, at least for the first bit, because people tried to figure out who selected what, and then, you know, I'd kind of start talking about something else, and it kind of seemed to work out where people weren't fully sure that I had it. So, yeah.
Cool. I'll just quickly kind of, if anybody wants to comment, but we don't have to, we can move on. But anything else anybody wants to comment on that Outlast outpost, or if you weren't there, you know, kind of how that experience was for you not going on that journey. Does anybody have any additional thoughts on it? No. We basically saw all the things you felt. Great.
Really quick. I mean, when I didn't get to go and Tim and Megan and I went back and there was the whole thing on the tape on the box, like that just blew my mind that other players were even like thinking about that sort of thing. And the fact that like Meg was right based off of that find, I don't know. That just like, I wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else on this call didn't go, but I never went to the outpost, and it was intentional because I had the option to go after that one challenge where we were holding the sandbags over our heads, and then we had to pick somebody to go, and I immediately was like, no, not me, because I thought that it would put a target on my back, like after seeing what happened to Andy because he had gone, and then, you know, questions start circulating, and I'm like, if I'm trying to fly under the radar, I don't even want there to be a question in anyone's mind as to if I have something or not. But
yeah, that's a great segue into my next question, which was to Sarah, who goes on an early journey. And, you know, to your point, Chelsea, right? Like that puts a little bit of a target on her early on Nebby. So Sarah, I'm curious about, you know, were you aware, do you think you were aware after seeing the episodes, you saw some people kind of questioning whether you were lying, telling the truth? You know, what was that journey like for you? And do you feel like that impacted your game maybe more than you thought it would?
Well, looking back, I see that it did. I think that if we stayed Nebby, I feel like it would have impacted my game more. But I think the fact that we swapped it didn't. But I think it was still helpful for me to go on the journey with Andy, just because, you know, we knew each other, and it was just like a good way to kind of do just a little talk between us. But honestly, I didn't really realize, I don't know, I was trying to be as honest as possible. I really wanted to be a hero here. So I just didn't tell anybody I didn't have a vote. But besides that, I wanted people to know, even though no one believed me. It's fine.
That's very interesting. And I will say, I can't tell you how mad I was when I saw that you were at production for CYS when Andy was going to be there. I was like, no, I worked so hard to have no connections. And then, yeah, of course, those things happen and we do our best. But cool. And so I think my next kind of specific question on something that happened pre-merge probably goes to Bartley. I think just chronologically, where you find a piece of clue on a path with your good buddy Rachel. So I'm just kind of curious about that experience. We kind of see how it plays out from an episodic perspective, but it sounds like there's a little bit more to it than maybe what we saw. So I'm just kind of curious what your experience was like with that. And yeah, any memories you have about that moment, because it was pretty iconic.
So I guess the first thing is that Tim was with us when we found it. And so I don't know. I guess I never even fathomed that it had come from Rachel. And to be honest, like I thought that Matt had the idol from our camp because it looked like he was packing something in his shorts. And it just turns out that, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
All right, we'll move on from that. And it's a good segue to Matt. We'll come to you next. So the next kind of moment pre-merge I wanted to kind of talk about was the Jacob vote. And I'll circle back with Bartley and Sarah kind of on this round as well, but thought I'd come to you. It's obviously a big part of the pre-merge. It kind of sets the tone, I think, a lot for kind of just the Neb. I don't want to say the complete dissolve of Nebby, but I think it kind of starts it, right? I think there's a lot about that moment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what you were thinking. I think we see a little bit in the episodes, but you kind of, I think you explain yourself pretty well, but anything we don't see or anything you want to clarify about that moment?
Yeah, I just, I was watching some episodes this week, and like just from the get-go, that first tribal where we were voting for people to be immune in the first Poto tribal, like I just connected psychically with Jacob, and I was like, I need this person. And so when he ended up on the Nebi 2.0 tribe, like I just felt really strongly for him. And then the whole like Hannah vote, we were trying to get Hannah out. Like I was keenly aware on day one, like how close Rachel and Hannah were. And when I talked to Jeff and Peter, like I tried to make a core 3, and I was like, who else we invite in? Jeff was like, well, let's get Hannah and Rachel in on this. And I was like, I want Megan on this. But brilliant move of his. So looking at the episode, I probably should have pressed harder, but I had Meg, who was one of my number ones, and Jeff, who I was really close to, say no go. And I was like, well, okay, these guys don't want it. So it did seem that like Nebi seemed to topple after that.
Yeah, I think that's the tipping point where I think we start to see, Wetu holds very tight together because they see the fractures within Nebi happening or starting to form, right? And I think it obviously, we'll ask Hannah during her roundtable, but it obviously, strikes something in her to start making some different decisions and moving in different directions. So I think it's the starting point where people start to think like tribal lines, they're starting to fracture for sure. So Chelsea, I'd love to come to you and just kind of ask, because they kept winning, we don't see a lot of the dynamics on Wetu, right? Like there's just not a lot of interesting footage because you guys are happy, you're winning. There's probably a lot that we didn't see, but I'm just curious, anything that we missed in the episodes from kind of your time on Nebi and the formation of that 6?
Well, I guess as I consider the dynamics of the group, something that was interesting to me was seeing how strongly the connection with Andy and Rachel and I was portrayed in the episodes, because I didn't necessarily feel that playing the game. And Rachel and I have actually texted about this since then to say, like, was I truly in your top 3? And both of us have sort of said like, not really. So at least it was mutual, but I honestly think that was sort of driven by Andy. And I don't want to speak for him because I don't know that for sure, but I know he had come up to me and said, like, it's you, I, and Rachel in the final 3. And I suspect he did the same to her. And so I think neither one of us wanted to be the one to say no, even though we both sort of felt, differently. Because in my mind, like Andy and I were very close, and I also trusted Stephanie and Maya. And so I like really wanted the 4 of us to stick together and stay strong. And I swear I'm almost done, but I have one other point, is that I feel like a mistake I made in that dynamic, like as I watch the episodes back, is losing Maya. Because I feel like I started sensing that Stephanie and Peter were getting fairly close. And so I put in like a lot of effort to try and stay close with Stephanie to like sort of heed off the potential for her to get a little bit closer with Peter than she was with me. And then I think what happened is I like by default neglected my relationship with Maya because I was so focused on keeping Stephanie. And that sort of clicked for me watching the episodes back. And I don't know that I fully comprehended that in the moment.
Maya, I'll give you a chance to kind of respond. Or did you feel neglected?
Absolutely, I did. Not just by Chelsea, by all of POTA, to be honest. I felt as though they were connecting a lot more with each other than they were with me. And I think that's because of my age. I think I was like underestimated a lot to the point where people maybe didn't respect me as much as a player. And I don't think that really clicked for me until I watched the episodes. And Stephanie kept going, yeah, well, I'm close with Andy and I'm close with Rachel and I'm close with Chelsea. And Maya's fun. She's cool. She's there.
Yeah.
And you hear this over and over again. And it's just like, I just don't think I was seen as on the same level as everyone else, which hurts, but you know, it's the game, whatever. But like, yeah, I felt neglected by all of my POTAs, TBH. And so, I mean, this will come up later, but I really regret, like my biggest regret in the game is not keeping Sarah and Bartley around, because I really feel like the three of us could have really done some damage together. And I felt like they prioritized me more than other people that I actually showed loyalty to.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll have a lightning round at the end with biggest regrets. Cool. Coming back to Bartley and Sarah, I do want to talk about your iconic 2-person tribe and immunity win. Certainly one of my favorite moments of the whole season. So I'm just curious. We see a little bit of it in the episodes, but like, what was that like? Tell me, like, you know, is that, as you look back, is that a moment that stands out for you?
Oh, I know for me, that was a moment I was really looking forward to seeing in the episodes. I remember feeling so defeated and kind of just in that moment being like, I saw you guys carry the little like fire making stations. And I said, I don't want to do that because Bartley will definitely beat me. And so I'm like, I have to win. We have got to win this. So to me, there was no losing that challenge. I was very determined.
I think, Bartley, you were pretty determined too, based on the scratching and the running through the bushes, not around the bushes, but through the bushes.
Yeah, I mean, I ran through the rock wall and the pricker bushes. I wanted to win really bad. You know, when it goes back a little bit, when, you know, Tim decided that he was going to step out of the game, he very much thought that Amelia, Sarah, and I were like basically getting a free pass to the merge. And then to find out that there was another round immediately after that, that was not a challenge for us to win. And to have to send Amelia, Sarah and I thought, okay, we're finally going to make the merge. Like, thank God. There was 14 holes in the torches at tribal council. And so we were like, it's at 14 or 13. And then to find out that we had to go to another challenge was like, there's no way I'm going to lose this, because one, I will not be able to get through voting out or going against Sarah and fire. And even if we had done that, the person who won that would be a target, because you've survived this entire tribe. You won fire already. It's just something you don't want on your resume.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate that that was always planned. We did discuss as a production team like what would happen if a tribe got whittled down to 2, and I think we were all like, that'll never happen. No, why would that ever happen? But it was all pre-planned. That was what we decided, and I will say, like, I think fire could have been cool, but I think the way it turned out was actually much cooler and much more fun and much.
No, it would not have been cool. The way it was supposed to be is the way that it happened.
I agree. I think it was pretty perfect. All right, and so kind of we'll wrap a little bit of the pre-merge session, kind of talking about kind of the earn the merge vote. Obviously, super chaotic, lots of stuff going down. I think, you know, at least the way it's in the episodes and what I could see from the footage, it really looked like it was a Meg or a Maya vote. So Maya, I'm curious about that round for you, and like, hearing that you were the other name, obviously putting a lot of faith in Rachel. We see you talk about that in the episode a little bit. So did we see it all? Did we see all that there was to see, or was there more behind that round that we didn't get to see?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely panicking that round. One, because in order to decide who was like going to be left over, I was worried POTA was going to be outnumbered no matter what. And so I was worried that I was going to be going. Or if it was between me and one other person on POTA, that it would be tough to get both of us to survive. So I felt really lucky, at least, that there were 3 of us POTA, and then 3 Nebby, and then the tiebreaker or 7th person ended up being one of our wet 2 Nebbies. I really felt like there was a fight there and there was a way to get through for all of us to get through. But yeah, the reason why I felt like I had so much faith in Rachel was because we had just flown the high of Wetu. We were winning, and we didn't have to test those alliances or that trust yet. And so I had no proof that Rachel was going to go with us. And I needed that round to assure my trust in her and to know that she was going to actually stay with us, even when the going got tough and she had to choose very clearly Nebi or Poda. And I was like, if I'm going, it's literally all because of Rachel. And so it was definitely a very scary moment. And of course, I was happy that Hannah was, I mean, of course, all the aftermath of that round was tough on you guys, but it helped us out. You know, Hannah was able to flip too. And so that made it easier for Rachel to come with us. So was happy it all worked out, but it was panicked the entire time.
Yeah, and I'll just toss out another kind of question for that round, and maybe it comes towards Matt. Is Matt? We see that the decision of who goes is done by Rox, right? And so if Peter is the one to go, and we can certainly ask this of his roundtable as well. But if Peter's the one to go, do you think? I think just with your connection with Peter, does that round go differently? Do you think Maya goes? Do you think Meg still goes, or does someone else go?
Man, I thought about this a lot. I mean, there's so many, like if our tribal had gone differently, it would have been a whole different grab bag of things. I think if Peter had come, I would have gone to Peter and been like, dude, I am in so much trouble. Hannah has my number. Like, maybe we need to get her out. But I suspect I would have stayed Nebi strong in that situation. Going into it, I really wanted to get Andy out. I was scared of all the advantages, but in my mind, Chelsea was one of the movers and shakers in that tribe. So going to her right away saying, hey, I'm not going to write your name down. Like, I was trying to get in with her. And when she was like, I'm not doing Andy, I was like, okay, well, Maya's my person.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I mean, so much of these games is just determined by those little moments of not luck, but just like chance of how something lands, right? So I am very curious, and we'll certainly ask in that roundtable, like, does Peter know what he would have done in that moment if it was him that was out there? Because he was obviously very close with Meg, very close with you, right? So if the three of you are a unit, does Hannah still flip, or do you think you can convince her to stay and kind of it becomes definitely a Poda that goes? It's very interesting to think about. All right, just one last little thing. Does anybody have anything about the pre-merge that they want to talk about before we move on to your episodes? Anything that wasn't shown? Anything we didn't see?
I have a huge question.
Yes.
Jeff, I want to know.
With us at the moment, just so you know, he seems like he lost service.
Whenever he gets back on, this is probably why he disappeared. I want to know who was saying his name, because I think the only person that was saying his name was the person in his head. I never heard his name. He keeps saying someone wanted him out. I never heard that. I want to know who it was. I want names.
All right. Well, when he pops back on, hopefully we can ask him that question. Anything else that wasn't shown pre-merge that people want to chat about? Anything that hasn't been discussed? Anything? All right. You can still bring it up later. Who am I kidding? But
you should bring up the coyote. There was Sarah, Amelia, and I woke up to a coyote, we think, howling in our camp at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And Justin has like tried to edit this out of history and memory. Amelia is wielding a machete. I'm throwing firewood into the woods. We are like hiding in our little tarp taco, and we walked out and woke your ass up in the playing field. And you were like, oh, well, if you'd like, you can sit on the bench by the porta potties until the sun comes up. And that's what we did.
Yeah, we watched a beautiful sunrise. And it was definitely, there was something, I've played games, like I know I've played Real Foot, and you could hear it, like you knew what time of night it was because of the coyotes. And those sounded far away. These sounded close. Like they were so close. And I was, we had no fire that night either. So, just not something I really wanted to mess with.
Yeah, we're adding emergency air horns to the tribe boxes for next year, so you can use those to scare the animals away.
We had a bear at Wetu. We had a bear.
Yeah, I'm still not sure I believe that, but
No, we all saw
did.
it. It was so close to us, and similar to what Bartley just said, it was funny because we all went out to the main trail and Justin ran into you, and we were like, we just saw a bear and it was heading toward which camp was it? The POTA camp.
Yeah.
And Justin was like, okay, and then he turns and walks away.
He was like, what do you want me to do about it? And we were like, tell them? I don't know.
We're in the woods. You know, there's wildlife out there. It's funny because the property owners do talk about like, yeah, we get deer, we had some moose. But because it's like a working farm, most of the wildlife there is pretty scared of like the people because there's always stuff happening there farm wise. So, you know, we're all pretty nonchalant of like, yeah, the animals don't care. Like they're more scared of us than we are of them. But we will continue to add to our safety practices to make sure that everyone is safe. Moving forward for sure. And the rule is, I think you got to get big, right? Isn't that what you all did? You got big and made noise.
We forgot which one, like the black bear, what you do, the brown one, what you do. So we were just like, we were whispering because we didn't want to be too loud. We were like, what do we do? What do we do? It's like, I think it's brown, stay down, black, fight back or something like that. I think it was a black bear. So we were like, we're going to get big was our solution.
I do wish we had footage of it because I think it'd be hilarious. But yeah. All right. Anything else pre-merge? All right. We are gonna just based on some people's schedules, we're gonna jump ahead to Chelsea's episode and talk a little bit about that because I want to make sure we get it in. So this is quite the round, right? So we've got this kind of very strange kind of segmented challenge, right? Where people kind of get eliminated in stages based on different, what we call like elements of Outlast. We get down to Andy winning immunity. He takes a group on a subway reward, which I think there's lots of feelings and opinions about, which we can certainly talk about. And then we go into the vote that night. So Chelsea, I guess I'll come to you first. Kind of how are you feeling going to the immunity challenge? Did you feel like you had to win? Did you feel at all like you were a target? And then talk to me a little bit about the reward challenge and like, did you feel maybe more of a target once you went on the challenge? And then talk to me about like once you got back, did you have any sense that like, you know, that I think we see in the episodes, right, that you are nervous, you are concerned. You know, do you think that, you know, your name's out there as a possibility to be voted out?
Well, I will say going into the challenge, I was not nervous. I didn't think that I had to win it, although it's always been a goal of mine to win an individual immunity. I have never done that, and I want to someday. But
Me too.
Oh, really?
I've never won one ever. That's wild.
That's surprising to me to hear. So like that was always a goal of mine, but I didn't think I needed to. I felt like confident enough in my relationships that I wasn't worried. And they always say the minute you feel comfortable is the minute you should not feel comfortable. I was a bit nervous when Andy picked me for the reward because I think I started feeling a little bit self-conscious about how apparent it was to the remainder of the merged tribe that Andy and I were close in particular. And so it just made me a bit nervous, but even going on the reward, I still didn't think coming back that I would have to be worried about anything. I felt like I was doing a good enough job of, you know, like flying under the radar. I hadn't really heard my name yet. And so was sort of calm. And then as soon as I got back to camp, I don't know if I was paranoid or what, but it was like I could just sense that something was wrong. And it was when Sarah and Hannah had come up to me to ask who I wanted to vote out. And I don't remember why, but I just got this feeling like something there, it doesn't feel genuine, like something happened while we were gone. And that's when I started getting a little nervous. And then Peter had confirmed it for me that everyone's voting for you. You know, like, too bad, so sad. And so I immediately started panicking, and I'll try and keep this relatively short, but like Stephanie and Andy kept saying, no, 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 it's not you. Don't worry about it. We haven't heard your name at all. Like, you're just being paranoid. It's fine. And then there's a clip of me in that episode walking to Tribal with Andy, and he says, by the way, I have this advantage and I can play it this round if you want me to play it for you. And I was like, yes, that's what I need. Like, please do it. And then you can literally in that clip see me sort of take a step back in my mind. I think I started second guessing if I was being too paranoid. And I got like this very guilty feeling of begging Andy to play his own advantage for me, and then worrying that he'd play it and then like I wouldn't have needed it, and I would have like guilted him into using his advantage when he didn't have to. And so anyway, I replay that tribal council in my head so many times, and Andy like double checks with me right as Bartley's playing his idol. Andy looks at me and is like, do you want me to play this? And I literally tell him no. And looking back, obviously I would do things differently in hindsight, but I think it was like a combination of feeling guilty, second guessing my paranoia, and just, I don't know. But anyway, that is a long-winded ramble. And I think that that would be my big regret there, is like I second guessed my gut feeling and let like guilt sort of take over. And yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because I know you do have to scoot soon. So that was going to be my only other question I wanted to get from you before you left was if you had any what your big regret would be. So it sounds like that was it. So thank you so much for being here, Chelsea. If you do have to scoot, feel free. But it was great to catch up with you a little bit. Bartley, I'm a little curious, kind of why Chelsea? Why Chelsea? Tell us why. Chelsea, you can listen in if you want.
Yeah, I'm staying for this.
Yeah, so I think if Chelsea and I had started on the same tribe, Chelsea and I would have been very close, I think. But from the merge, I would say out of all the players that were there, the most distance was between Chelsea and I, and we just never really connected on any sort of personal level. And so that round, it was actually Peter that came to me and said your name, Chelsea, which blew my mind that he had gone to you and said that he had heard your name. And for me, I don't know if I was really thinking like, oh my gosh, I can idol out Chelsea. She's a huge front runner. It was more so like, I need to write down a name that I am given, because if I survive this round, I want to look like I'm someone that's trustworthy and like says, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that's why I wrote your name down, is because Peter had brought that name to me. I mean, Sarah and I had talked about it a little bit as well, and I knew Sarah was going to vote for me. And Sarah, if I remember correctly, I think you were like, you can basically choose who goes home. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like that happened.
No, I definitely said that.
Okay. And it was just because Peter gave me your name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You know, it's funny because I shouldn't say it's funny, but watching the episodes back, I think, man, I keep talking about my mistakes, but I made so many of them. I feel like my strategy of wanting to be loyal to people ended up doing me a disservice with you in particular, Bartley, because by the time you had come up to me to start talking and try to discuss strategy, we had already been talking about you going next, like the original POTA. And so I was hesitant to make you promises, knowing that I might end up writing your name down. And like, I just didn't want to appear like, I don't know, I didn't like that look for myself and didn't want you feeling resentful on a jury and stuff. And in hindsight, I'm like, why though wouldn't you have at least explored the potential of working together, or at least talk to him more? And it ended up, coming back full circle to get me at the end. So yeah, but completely understand.
I do have a small addition. Peter also threw out your name to me, Chelsea. He wanted me to vote for you too. It was like right before we were leaving for tribal. He pulls me aside and he's like, "Hey, I want to get Chelsea out. Would you be down for that?" And because like there was all this turmoil about how I didn't get picked for the reward and all this stuff, so I'm assuming he thought that I would do it. But I was still very like, no, I don't want Chelsea to go. I don't think that's good for my game.
I knew I couldn't trust Peter. Sorry, Peter.
That intuition, though, when Justin aired that, I was like, oh, girl, you were right. Do not trust him because he was the one that gave me your name.
Man. See, I should have listened to my gut all these times when I second guessed myself. But I got to hop off now, but it was so nice to see everyone.
Bye, Chelsea.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for being here. Yeah, Maya, that was going to be a question that I had for you. Was we obviously see that fire pit scene where like everyone's talking about Chelsea and you're kind of steaming. And so I'm curious, like how much of you saying, yeah, Chelsea, that sounds fine was real, or how much of it was just to kind of placate the folks there? And I'm very curious how mad you actually were to not go on the reward. We see you with Andy and that scene, number one, we have to talk about that scene because it's so good. But number two, like, was that you kind of trying to milk the moment to try to get some favor with Andy, or were you really upset?
I was genuinely upset, not because of the materialistic part of getting food and being out of the rain. It was what it symbolized. It was that I wasn't a priority to him, and I was not in his core alliance the way that he was leading me to believe I was. And it was just funny because people kept saying, is Maya actually mad that she didn't get to go to Subway? No, that's not it. It's that Andy didn't prioritize me in that moment. And in that vote, I was really genuinely going back and forth. I felt like Bartley showed me so much loyalty the round before. He took me away from that tribal with him, and I didn't want him to go. But I felt as though everyone else wanted me to also vote with them and get rid of Bartley. But in my gut, I didn't want that. But I felt as though I had built all this trust with the POTAs for this long. And just because Andy didn't pick me didn't mean that like Chelsea and Stephanie maybe wouldn't have picked me or Rachel wouldn't have picked me. You know, like I didn't know fully where everyone else was at. And so I felt like it would be a big gamble for me to completely just like throw my game in the other direction and then be the only one voting with Bartley and maybe Sarah, because I didn't know if she was going to actually vote him out or not. So I just felt like it was too risky, and I wasn't prepared to make that big of a swing yet. But yeah, I was genuinely battling whether or not to do it because I didn't want to see Bartley go.
And Sarah, I'll come to you about this as well, because you obviously tell Bartley, you know, and kind of give him the nudge, you should play your idol kind of situation. So talk to me a little bit about that. You have ultimately vote for him, I think, you know, in a way to kind of show that I think you say in the episode, even like, I've got to show that I'm willing to align with other people. But I'm just curious about your decision to tell Bartley what was going on.
Well, I didn't want Bartley to go because at the end of the day, Bartley and we were on a 2-person tribe together. There was no secret that him and I were close. I didn't think there was any reason to not show that. So I knew Bartley had an idol, so it's like, why not have a little fun and tell Bartley that to play it? So one, it's a fun time to play an idol and for everyone to be surprised. But two, I wanted Bartley around for, you know, a number for me, but also because we were trying to make things happen. I think it was just going to be hard for us to get further than we did.
And actually, I think for Maya or for Sarah, did anybody talk about possibly throwing another vote there just in case Bartley had an idol? Like, let's just have another name in there too, so on a revote we can kind of make other decisions. Was there any talk of that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people's regret around that tribal is not throwing a vote. I know I regret not throwing a vote on Peter. I feel like Peter was the fact that he was talking about my name in the previous round. He was throwing out Chelsea to me, which I was like, why would you do that? It felt like he was completely abandoning the Wetu 6 that we had created. And so I was like, then why do we keep him around? So I wish I had thrown a vote on Peter. And I think he had a strong chance of going home if somebody had thrown a vote on Peter. So yeah, I do wish I did that. And I know Rachel said that she wishes she did that too. I don't want to speak for her, but she did say that to me.
Yeah, I'll ask that group as well, because I think it's a tribal council that, while I don't know that it necessarily changes the course of the game too much, it's certainly like the fact that Bartley could have picked anybody at that moment to go, right? It could, I think it certainly had an impact for some folks, obviously for Chelsea, but certainly had an impact, right, for Andy as Chelsea was his number one. And I love the concept of like literally Bartley could have picked anybody to go, right? So he really had everybody's kind of fate in his hands, which is just wild when there's that many people in the game to not split the vote in some capacity. It sounds like to me, from what I've heard, that it's almost a fluke that everyone voted for Bartley. That wasn't necessarily going to be the plan. I don't know if you guys have any context on that at all, but I've heard kind of like it just happened to be that everyone ended up voting for Bartley. All right. We'll come back to this round if we need to, but I do need to bring back to the stage to answer Matt's very important question, Jeff. So we'll go back to the merge round. So we merge. Obviously, Jeff, you talk about it a bunch. I think other people talk about it a bunch, that you are a big physical threat, big challenge threat. And you didn't quite seal the deal on that first immunity challenge. So how much heat were you feeling that round specifically?
For some reason, I didn't really feel that I was on the chopping block that round when I actually ended up going home. I think I felt so good with my alliance with Hannah at that point that I felt like she would tell me, and it seemed like she kind of had the ins with some other folks that she had talked to, some of the girls from the original Yellow. So I just, it was a complete blindside just because she didn't tell me anything at that point. Nebby was falling apart, and that was, a big part of my game was keeping existing blue strong. I was very, very much Nebby strong going in. And then once all of that fell apart, I just didn't expect it like right away as soon as the merge happened. I still had, a few things I wanted to like get fake idols to be part of the season that I'd prepared. And there were, two of them that could have changed the course of the game. But yeah, it was just a big blindside at that point. And I thought it was an easy Maya vote that time. And I remember at one point, like, Maya, Hannah, and I were standing around talking, at three of us, and I felt awkward because I'm like, okay, well, this is obvious. Everyone's just saying Maya. And I should have realized that she didn't seem too nervous. She was also just kind of standing there, and we were talking about, like, not even game strategies, just random things. And then, I had a few conversations with Hannah, where I think she started to get doubt in her head from things that like either Rachel had said, or I realized that the power of the comments that I had made. Like at one point I was walking by Chelsea and I just said like, see you in the finals, complete joke. But, she ended up saying that to like the girls when they were having a conversation, and I must have said something to Sarah. Well, like I said, I want to work with her. And then, so, it got in Hannah's head that maybe she wasn't my number one. And, after what Rachel said too, it started to kind of like turn her, and she confronted me about like some of the things and not telling her about the idol or telling Matt before her and stuff like that. But, once that paranoia was set in her head and she didn't trust me fully like she did before, I guess that's why I didn't find out, but I still felt safe that round. And, that's when you feel safe is when you go, I guess. And I'd already burned my idol, so.
Yeah, great segue, because that was going to be my next question. So I'm a little curious. We can kind of take a step back, and I think Matt has a question for you regarding this. But so you play the idol. Any regrets there about? There's probably obvious regrets there, but do you have regrets about not keeping it for that merge round?
Definitely, 100%. If things didn't go that south in the round before, I don't think I would have even needed to play it that round. But I think it would have benefited me and my alliances a little deeper into the game. Things kind of got crazy, and the problem is we didn't go to tribal before that vote, so it's kind of like the first time for us. And then Matt had a strong connection with Jacob, which I didn't realize how strong that was. And so when I saw him and Meg talking, and then something felt weird, and he was doing his confessional, and then I talked to Meg about it. And I talked to Matt, and Hannah's name was thrown out, but it sounded very weirdly like I was going to be blindsided. And just because I was shocked that they would throw Hannah's name out when I thought it was obvious that her and I were pretty tight. So I thought, that like there's no way they would just tell me if Hannah was the actual vote. And so then once that started, paranoia set in. Couldn't even make eye contact with Meg, and for her things seem normal, but it's all this. When you're in the game, it's just the feeling is crazy. Like everything's so magnified. And so then I was like sitting at Tribal, and I didn't want to freak Hannah out, so I didn't tell her anything at all until after Tribal. So she was like in La La Land, like everything was great, like Nebby's strong. Like, she was sad Jacob was going home. But I'm sitting there and I'm like trying to figure out what to do and stressing. And I think I whispered to Matt at some point because I was debating to play it on Hannah or on me. And I figure I don't want to play it on her and go home because that would be, like Eric from Survivor or something like that. And so I whispered to Matt at some point. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna burn. I'll play it on Hannah, and that's it. And then I played it on myself, and that was the plan to kind of make, just in case, if they think I'm playing it on Hannah, then I protect myself. That would kind of cover the both of us. And it ended up just being a burned idol, and then the aftermath, which wasn't immediately covered, but the aftermath of that was also crazy, like a huge explosion between the four of us walking back, where Hannah is like being filled in because this is a huge shock to her, what's even going on, and I'm trying to fill her in because I'm freaking out too, and then things go very south after that, obviously, for us, even though I was really excited for that alliance and to reconnect with Peter later, and it could have been powerful. But Matt was playing the game, which is great. He was trying to keep his alliances strong, and I was trying to keep my alliances strong. So
yeah. So Matt, does your question still stand? Do you still want to ask?
I do, Jeff. Like, since episode 1, I feel like you've been saying some people think that you're a threat, that your name's on the block. I never heard your name. I want to know who said to you that you were going home. Like, no one said your name. I think it's the voices in your head. What's up?
Yeah, it's possible. I think we had such a strong, in my head, such a strong Nebby connection, such like a good thing going in, that I was so taken aback and shocked when I heard, you and Hannah were essentially my number ones at that point. And when I heard her name being told to me, it sounded like everything was falling apart. And I'm like, okay, well, this is Survivor. I don't want to be too naive. Like, I figure, they're voting me out and just giving my alliance's name and turning us on each other or something. And yeah, maybe no one actually said it. I don't remember. I think people had mentioned that, like, Hannah and some other people had mentioned that, once we hit merge, like, I know you're going to be a target. And, stuff like that. So I was already ready for that. But obviously this happened right before the merge. So kind of all set in.
And I underestimated how close you were to Hannah. If I had known that bit, I probably would have.
Yeah, Matt, that was going to be my question to you. Have any sort of regrets around that round, or would you have handled it differently? We touched on it a little bit earlier, but anything that you would have done differently there to maybe protect the next few rounds of the game, which kind of things go haywire?
Knowing what I know now, I would have rewound to the previous thing, because Jacob and Alex, I was like feeling them out. Like, do you guys want to push anything when on the Alex vote out? But then they weren't coming strong with me. But looking back, I would have been like, let's get the three of us together. I think if you had known the three of us were together, you would have joined us. And maybe just me feeling loyal to Meg, if I had just, I don't know, maybe getting those guys together, working with the new Nebby guys.
Yeah, and that could have been different too, just because, and I love Meg, but I would be a lot more willing to, if it was good for a gameplay and if that's what you wanted to do, and Hannah was on board, then I might have gone that way to vote Meg out at that point, just because I was closer to Hannah, and but I know you were close with Meg, so you didn't really do that.
Well, that lesson learned. I should be even more chaotic, just out there, and then just put everything up, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, right? Because there is talk in that in the round where Jacob goes of like, Matt basically says like, is this best for your game? Once we hit merge, you need other threats around you, right? And so like Jacob going there, maybe that changes the game, for that first merge vote. Sarah, Bartley, any, this is kind of weird with him on the line, but any regrets about Jeff going there? Probably more towards Bartley and Sarah, just because that's where Nebby numbers start to get chopped, right? So like, does keeping Jeff around at all benefit kind of your games, and any regrets on Jeff going that round? Bartley or Sarah?
I don't think it necessarily benefited or not benefited my game, if that makes sense. I think regardless, because being on a 2-person tribe, I still think no matter what, I was still going to struggle getting far. Because regardless, like Jeff would have still been with other people, and like my old tribe members would have been with other people. We never built trust with them because we never went to tribal together. So I don't think it would have made a huge difference in my game, personally.
Echo what Sarah said. I don't know if it benefited or didn't benefit me to have Jeff go. I was just hearing that a lot of folks had made final 2s with Jeff, and Jeff had never approached me for that until we were walking back from the immunity challenge where I beat him. And so I was like, no, this is not going to be an opportunistic moment for you.
So Jeff, I have to ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Maya.
I just want to say one small thing was that on Wetu, we were very transparent with each other, making a plan of how we were going to get to the final 6. And our agreement was the first vote had to be Jeff. In order for them to show the original Nebby, for them to show allegiance to us, they needed to prove that by voting Jeff out first. So I think that's also context that wasn't in the episode, but definitely was a big reason why Jeff went there.
Thanks, Maya.
Yeah, we see a little bit of that in some of the camp life footage, but yeah, I think probably the gravity of it, or like the kind of prove to us piece, isn't captured very well. I think another thing, Jeff, like I know you talked a little bit about the fake idols. Like if they ever really came into play, they probably would have made the edit, but there's a lot of talk of it, but it never really like makes much of a presence. So none of that really made the edit, but I know you were trying. I know that was a big, you talk about that quite a bit. But I do have to ask Jeff, at the end of the day, who was your true final 2 number 1? Like who was it?
Definitely Hannah. I wouldn't have ever put her name down. And then I really did want to work with Matt and Peter. And so, before everything went south, I really felt like I had like Hannah, Matt, and Peter. I mean, more so Matt than Peter, just because of the split and how, we had our original Nebby, and I started getting closer with Meg at that point. But I mean, Hannah was my number 1, and Matt was right up there, right behind her. So everyone else I was willing to work with. Like, I wanted to work with other people that were kind of physical threats and good at challenges, because that's kind of what I would need as a player going into people like Chelsea, like Jacob, like Bartley. So I did want to open some doors and try to make some alliances, not kick out my current ones with Hannah and Matt, but I was trying to open some doors, but I guess maybe too aggressively, where people thought I was not loyal to anyone.
Yeah, it's tough finding that balance of like showing you're open to working with people and not shutting anything down, so that you kind of put a target on yourself, but not also making it sound like you're going to work with everybody, and that therefore like no one's special, right? Like so, yeah, that's always a tough line. Anything, Jeff, that we did not see from your game that you want to talk about before we move on to the next round? I don't know if you're saying anything, but if you are.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of moments. I mean, it's hard to capture everything. There are all these little things that happen. Overall, I think there's just a lot of lessons learned for me, how strong each word weighs that you kind of say to people, and how things can be perceived differently. So I don't know, a lot of takeaways from it. But I really, even from the start, I just really wanted to make sure I had strong alliances going into the match, and because of one thing or another, that didn't happen. And so there's just no way, even if I had an idol and, won some immunities, I really couldn't get deep in the game unless I had those strong alliances of like really good trust built, or maybe it would have benefited to have some tribal councils early on and build trust with people like that. So
yeah, that's kind of not necessarily a question, but I think a comment of like, it's so hard when you don't prove trust through votes to build those relationships, right? So and then even the tribal councils you did have were kind of, I don't want to say they were obvious, right? But they were kind of easier in that you weren't necessarily cutting some of those original bonds when voting out Alex and voting out Jacobs. Yeah. That's definitely a hard road for sure. Awesome. Anything else people want to talk about for that merge round, that first round? Matt, I'll come to you next. Go ahead, Jeff, if you have anything. Nope. Okay. Matt, I'll come to you next because this will kind of be a bridge between the two rounds because we see you say like your game's a hot mess. And I think you vote with Jeff that round, so you don't vote for Jeff. Did you know that Jeff was going or not? No? Is that wrong? Am I wrong?
I voted for Jeff to go.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. At that point, he didn't trust me anymore, which, sucks, but it's just where we were in the game and how things blew up. And so it was time to say goodbye to him. Okay. And my relationship with Hannah.
Yeah. So going into that next round, you obviously know kind of you're in a tough spot. How did you feel you did in the memory challenge? Did you think there was a chance you won that?
No, but I thought I should have been, looking back, should have been like, oh man, I'm a baller. I got the best memory. I got 9 out of 10. I should have freaked people out, but I was pretty sure I did not win that one.
Yeah, and that's part of the design. I was surprised there wasn't more of that, of people kind of faking how good they were, how confident they felt in it. That's the whole design. I know Bartley's mad about it. We'll talk about that too. But that's the whole design of the hidden immunity, is so that there's mystery. People can play it up like they won, and to try to cause fractures, try to cause a split vote, right? Try to have there be more options out there. So do you think, kind of looking back on that round, Matt, outside of kind of maybe playing up your memory strength, anything else you could have done that round, do you think, to save yourself?
Man, I was riding high from winning 3 things in the auction. I was kind of high from the coffee, a little bit delusional. I will say, like, looking back, I felt like I had like a pretty good read on things socially. Like, I knew Rachel was queen bee. She was the bachelorette. Like, I had to bow down. That, like, she kind of saved me getting into the merge, and like I was in her good graces. There were many times I would have thrown my game on the line for Peter. I was hoping that he would kind of like drag me for a few rounds, somehow work his magic. Like if Peter and Rachel could help me out. So I was trying to play low. I knew something was up when people weren't talking to me. But then I was just kind of like, I don't know if maybe I was a little spooked from the last, 2 rounds ago when I kind of caused chaos. I was like, ooh, Matt, maybe you need to simmer down a little bit and just go with the flow. When maybe I should have stirred the pot a little bit. But yeah, I guess my game, it was a hot mess, and I was hoping Rachel would show mercy on me.
And I was going to ask, this kind of like a random question, but I wanted to ask, you had obviously just like a month before played Bloomington, right? And folks should watch those episodes. We love Survivor in Bloomington. If you haven't, you can see more Matthew Shedd. But I'm curious, because knowing what I know about that season, you were fairly chaotic. Did that impact coming into this game? That's no surprise faces, right? Like, you were a big character. There's a lot of chaos there. Do you think that game and how that game played out affected how you played this game at all?
Well, sir, I am offended. I was not chaotic. In every game, I'm the most loyal. No one is ever loyal to me. You see how everyone turns on me. It's never my fault. But yeah, I was trying to be a little bit more even-tempered. But the whole, I go into these for the experience, and it's like, while I'm in it, like, you're trying to get to the end, but also I'm kind of like third eye, like, oh my God, I'm in this, and I'm at tribal council, and I'm just here. It's fun and it's fun being scared that you're going to get voted out. So even when it happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting voted out of a Survivor game.
Bartley, Sarah, Maya, anybody, any comments on like, were there other options that round? Do you think it was kind of Matt at that point was a dead man walking, or were there other options that could have been explored?
I didn't know that Matt was going to go that round. And that's part of the reason why I played my advantage, is because there didn't seem to be a logical name that was coming my way. And so I just assumed that it was me.
I mean, I also similarly wasn't sure Matt was going to go and felt vulnerable myself. I'd been catching votes left and right these past rounds, so I also thought it was me. So I was like, as long as it's not me.
I mean, I'll say Sarah was the only person who told me a name, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. You're like giving me my key into the game. I have second life. So whatever you did, Sarah, thank you for that name and voting for Stephanie with me.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was just, Sarah, we don't see too much in the episode of kind of how that name comes to life. And, did you feel like you had numbers behind that name more than we saw in the episode?
I think at that round, I felt like it was a very chaotic round. I'm trying to remember. So a lot of times with games, I'm so in the game that when I leave the game, I'm like, what happened in said game?
Yeah.
So thank you for reminding me that I voted Stephanie that round. But I think I felt so chaotic and I'm pretty sure I did have people say they would vote that way. But I think I also I think I felt decently safe that round as well. Because I didn't want Matt to go, because I felt like Matt was somebody that I could work with, but I felt like there wasn't much I could do, and I didn't have that much power over everything going on. And I'm like, well, I'm a minority here, so I need to try my best to just kind of go with the flow, even though I didn't. So there's that.
Bartley, I'm curious. I think it's probably obvious kind of what happened, but your use of tribal council passed, right? You basically say in the episode, I didn't really know what the name was, and I'd rather just like take myself out of the equation. And the other name that has been out there, and the other one person that seems on the outs is Maya. But anything that we didn't see about that use of the tribal council pass that you wanted to mention?
I guess the only thing I'll add about the round is that that's when the skies opened and we got dumped on. And so it sort of also changed that round of the game. And I think people were a lot closer in who they were giving information to. And so it just felt very chaotic not having. I mean, I would have voted for Stephanie if I was there, but it didn't seem like Stephanie was going to go.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting how the elements kind of impact strategy, right? Because when it's dry, you have a lot of options of where to go and how to kind of spread out. When it's raining, there's less options and a lot of people huddled under a tarp, which makes it harder to talk. And Bartley, I guess my other question is, did you ever think to use it in which you would get people out of tribal council so that you could control the vote versus just saving people that were leaving, right? So like, could you have removed, I don't know, like Rachel and Stephanie and like guided the vote the way you wanted, right? Because you're really eliminating their ability to vote. Was that ever something that entered your mind, or was it more like, this is an opportunity for me to take myself out and save myself?
Well, had I known I had won immunity, I think that could have been on the table. But yeah, at that point, it was self-preservation.
Got it. Yes. Anything you want to say about not knowing that you want immunity? Anything you want to? Anything?
No. So, well, I knew that I had done like fairly decent. I think I got 6 or 7 right. But I was so hung up on that stupid ball in the blue cone. And it's actually in the edit where I wrote down the right color. And then I was like, well, is it red? Is it pink? Is it red? Is it pink? I can't tell. I know it's reddish. And I changed it and I was wrong. And I was so fixated on not getting that one that like I guess I didn't give myself enough credit knowing that I had done really well otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's by design, but I understand the frustration and the how many things could go differently if you know who wins that one. But it was by design why we did that, right? Because we also, we want to find ways to give people that are in the minority or maybe on the outs an opportunity to shake things up, right? So that's one of the ways we try to do that. Maya, it seems like you're itching to say something.
Yeah, I have a small comment about that. It's just that, like, right after it happened, I didn't even think about the option of lying about it. Like, I was just like, wow, I did so bad in that. And then Stephanie turns to me and she goes, shut up. Like, don't say that. Because, like, out of the POTAs, I was the most vulnerable. So she was like, don't say that you did bad. Like, play it up. But I was like, it's already too late. I already said it.
Yeah. All right. So Matt unfortunately departs. He's now a member of the jury. Anything, Matt, from your game that we didn't really capture, didn't get to see from the episodes that you want to mention?
One apology that's just been weighing on my heart. Maya, I'm sorry I lied to you pre-merge about the vote. I think you're a wonderful person. I've enjoyed connecting with you after the game. Sorry for the lie. The other thing was how blindly loyal I was to Peter. Like in the sandbag game, I was constantly like, "Are you gonna drop?" Because I would have dropped for him. And like was it the Connect 4 where we went against Yellow? My whole team was like, "Oh no, we're not trying to save green." I was like, "We're going against Yellow, and my Peter's over there. Like, I'm gonna do anything to save my Peter." So there were so many times I would have like sacrificed for Peter. I don't know why I was so obsessed with him. I don't know. He won my heart, but I guess my heart wasn't enough for him. That is all I have to say.
All right. And so we go into the kind of the horrible night, the last night, where it was. I think it had stopped raining, but it was still, everything was very wet. You didn't, everything was kind of soaked. Anybody like thoughts on that night? When I came to in the morning, everyone was kind of bundled up and wrapped in tarps and doing their best. But anybody want to tell me a little bit about what that night experience was like for them?
I was so happy.
I really regret that night.
You what?
He regrets that night?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh,
I do because when we got back that night, like, well, first of all, Sarah had her sleeping bag, so she was very happy. But production, came and made us a fire and brought us sleeping bags, and the tribe sort of spread them out, and everyone was figuring out where they were going to go. And I had just returned from everyone writing down my name and just sort of got in my head. And it felt like everyone was taking up space on the mats. And I self-sabotaged myself. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going to sleep. And so I'm not going to sleep next to these people and stay warm. And I just cut down the tarp and like went to the other side of the camp and just wrapped myself up in it like a burrito. And like, I just really regret like not in that moment being like, Bartley, you're still in the game. Like, go snuggle with Andy if you need to, and let's figure something out.
Yeah. It's amazing how that kind of stuff really can get to you. I have a very similar, my first game, I came back from a reward where I thought everyone had turned against me while I was gone. And I had completely self-sabotaged. I walked up to people and I was like, I'm turning on all my alliance members. I hate them all. And it's just like that stuff gets in your head so easily. Like the little things that, your brain does in those moments are a little crazy. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just Bartley kind of coined it a little bit here. I was very happy because I won the sleeping bag. So I just spent a lot of time drying it next to the fire so that I could sleep in it nice and warm and cozy. I had a great night's sleep that night. I'll be honest. It was awesome. So I don't know. Everyone else was cold and shit, but I felt great.
I wanted to say a small bit about the night too. When they were out for the reward and we were all huddled around the fire that production had made us, I remember being so upset and I was just like, okay, I'll flip. I'll do whatever. I don't care. I'll do anything. And I was like, anyone got anything for me? and it was crickets. Like nobody entertained my offer. Like it was just quiet and awkward. And I was like, is anyone going to pick up what I'm putting down? I'm assuming it was just that like people didn't believe me and thought I was just gonna tattle to Photo once they got back. But I was genuinely like feeling so betrayed, and I was like, I will do anything and I don't care and I will flip. And then when that wasn't taken, I was like, okay, well, I guess I shouldn't flip at all.
Interesting. And then I get there bright and early Sunday morning for our endurance challenge. And I will say a couple things. So for this season, we had like a torrential storm, as the cast has alluded to here, that we were obviously not expecting. It did alter, as much as we tried to plan everything out and do it rain or shine, there were just some things that couldn't happen, right? So the tribal council was moved very late, and there was supposed to be an overnight immunity challenge that night. And we're like, these people are going to quit if we make them do a challenge at like 11 o'clock at night in this horrible kind of horribleness. So we're like, okay, we'll bump it to the early morning. I was like, I'll get up at 5. I don't care. Like, we'll do it super early so we kind of get back on track time-wise. And I actually kind of liked it. Like, it was beautiful. The sun rose. It was kind of nice, right? Like, so actually kind of everything works out for a reason, I guess. Yeah, I think the other thing that, you've all alluded to is, as much as we want the cast to experience it and to suffer, we also, safety is a big thing. And, in games like this or the real show, I won't say the actual name, although you all have, but copyright. Like once you go to tribal, you earn fire, you get fire, you keep fire. Although lately, I guess they're taking away their flints and shit. But, so we kind of honored that as well and made sure that because they had all been to tribal, that they still had fire at their camp for the night. And we did, I fought against it, but we did give them all sleeping bags for that night as well. Some of the comfort stuff to try and make their night a little easier. So
I have to call you a little bit out on this because there's a little bit of production stuff here that, we had fire at POTA and we were forced to basically smother it before we went to a challenge. And then we kept on this cycle of going to tribal council and challenges, and we were trying to keep it going, and you kept making us smother it. And that's why we didn't have any fire on night 2. So calling you out on that.
Yes. So just safety wise, we can't have fires burning when we're not in camps. So we have to figure out a way to kind of keep them banked or something. But the idea is that hopefully you're all proficient enough with flint and other things that you can get your fire back when you need to, So yes, it is obviously not a perfect science. And hope, in an ideal world, you'd be able to make a fire and keep it burning while you're gone. So it is a tricky thing because we want everyone to be safe and not to have fires blazing when we're not at camps. But yeah, just maybe need a little more practice with that flint. That's all, right?
I made fire on the first night. We cheated, but we made it.
That's the other thing. We now have we're gonna have new rules this year from all you people taking all the toilet paper out of the outhouse so you can make fires.
We used the Purell too. We used the hand sanitizer.
Oh, we know. Don't.
We did too. We did too.
All right, so we do that immunity challenge. Very, very simple, standing on the bricks. Bartley, very curious about, and I think you talk about it a little bit in the episode, but your decision, knowing maybe you're in the hot seat, to step down as opposed to trying to win. So I'm curious your thought on that. You talk about it. You say like, hopefully an extra vote makes me more valuable than if I'd won the immunity challenge, right? So, but just tell me a little bit more about your thoughts there.
Point, everyone was just talking about how I was a challenge threat, and I had won 2. I had come in second on another, and so like winning would have gotten me through that round, but like at some point it was like I need to do something to shake things up. I need to have allies. I need people to work with me, and it seemed like an extra vote was my best option at the time. And I don't know, like maybe I could have stayed up there as long as Maya and Sarah did, but it seemed like it was worth the risk.
And unfortunately, I love Mike P with all my heart, and he's so valuable to our team. But he somehow stops recording in the moment, Sarah, that you fall off the brick, and it's the one thing I regret. But just curious, Sarah, like, was that just a lack in concentration? Was it because everyone's like, oh, did they make a deal and you just didn't want to show it? And I was like, I don't think they made a deal. I don't remember them making a deal or anything. So curious about that, kind of the end of that challenge.
I think it was either a lapse in concentration or just I lost my balance because the ground was pretty wet. So it's not that it was like a dry day. I felt so good about that challenge because balance is something I am good at. And I was like practicing that a lot. So I felt really shitty about that. But I still felt great about almost winning. And I was happy at least that Maya was the one that won that time, just because she was somebody I was interested in like trying to work with. So yeah, I was still felt good about it regardless.
Yeah. I loved the birth of your like final 2 deal as part of that. And I was like, so in the game, I was so rooting for it. I was like, I hope these two can find a way to make this happen, because that would be so cool for that to like kind of come out of that challenge and like take on the game. That would have been so fun. Maya, how does it feel to win that challenge? I feel like, did you say that in Survivor Northeastern you had never won an immunity challenge? Is that right? So this was like your first immunity win?
Yeah, it was my first one. I was pretty excited about it. I'd never won anything in Survivor Northeastern, so I was pretty hyped about that. When you said unfortunately, I thought you were like, oh, unfortunately Maya won. I was gonna be like, wow, rude. No, but I was very proud and happy I stuck it out. And another thing I will include that I didn't tell any of the players while I was playing because I wanted to cover it, but I had an ankle injury at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I still won. So I was
Nice.
pretty proud of myself for that.
And you beat Hannah, who is like a professional statue. I don't know if you all
Yeah.
follow her, but she like does statue work as part of her job. So that was
Pat
cool.
myself on the back.
Was there anything, Sarah or Maya, that you were you thought about taking, you thought of stepping down, or were you there for the long haul?
No, I was definitely there for the long haul.
Same.
I needed it.
Me too. I was absolutely not stepping down for anything.
So we go into that round, and obviously Bartley's trying to make things happen. He's trying to find his avenues. Sarah, I'm curious how much of your, I don't want to say anger, but your kind of frustration with Bartley kind of saying that telling people that you told him to play the idol, how much of that was real versus how much of that was kind of maybe show? Like, what were you really feeling in that moment, I guess?
I was feeling annoyed and like bewildered. I'm just like, what are you doing? Because it just didn't, because it was like, to me, like I said earlier, it was obvious that we were close. So I feel like there was no reason to hide it, because I feel like no matter, we could have even been like, we actually hate each other. People would have been like, you're still close. So I felt like there was nothing we could do really in that sort of situation. So I was annoyed, but after talking with Bartley, I did feel better about the whole thing and understood where he was coming from, and like why. But it did make me kind of in the game go, what should I really be doing here? But I still felt like, I'm just going to stick with what I'm going to stick with.
Yeah. Bartley, there was actually a comment you made that I really loved that I want to mention. You say something like, we're not going to get very far together if we do everything together or always vote together or something like that. There was some comment of like, if we're continuing to see as a pair and as a duo, that's actually bad maybe for our long-term game. So I'm kind of curious, like, what were your thoughts during that round? Where did you feel like you had avenues that you could have explored that you didn't maybe?
Well, I love Sarah to death. Like, in real life, you are my ride or die girl. Love you to death. I was willing to cut her that round because I was being seen as such a huge threat. And in my head, when I made the proposition to Andy and Steph, I knew they were not going to want to go after Rachel, which is why I put Sarah's name in there as like, oh, but they'll go for Sarah. I just thought that, if I take Sarah out, then maybe I'll be finally like a little bit less of a threat and I can weasel my way a few more rounds. And so I'm so sorry, but like, had that opportunity been there, yeah, I would have taken it for sure.
Maya, do you think there's anything that Bartley could have done that round to save himself? Or like, was it like, hey, he doesn't have immunity for the first time. Like, this is our maybe our one and only shot to do it.
That was the word, was that everyone was saying, all right, Bartley is pulling out these advantages, pulling out the idol. Now is like also good at challenges. Like he's got to go. And I just felt like the momentum was so strong that I felt like if I had voiced an opposing opinion and wanted him to stay, that I would be next to go, because why am I protecting him?
How could you do it, Maya? He saved you from tribal council.
I know, and I really wanted to stick it out. Like in retrospect, I really wish I stuck it out with Bartley and Sarah. I was just so worried about the power that Rachel had, and that her ability to sway everybody else was so strong that like I wouldn't be able to survive keeping Bartley and Sarah around. And so I had to do what I had to do with the numbers. But I mean, we'll talk about it later, but it's clearly a domino effect.
Yeah, I do feel like, no offense to Matt and Jeff, right? But I do feel like once they are gone, like Bartley is kind of like that round is kind of the last opportunity for people to make big moves and have enough numbers to kind of work around what seems like a very strong core within the Wetu group. And whether you deem that Andy and Rachel, or Andy, Rachel, Hannah, or Andy, Rachel, Hannah, Chelsea, or any of those things, right? Like there's a strong group there. And so like Bartley and Sarah are basically putting themselves out there as like, we are numbers to use, right? If you're not feeling happy. And I think that's what we start to see with Peter, is he's like, I want to make something happen because like I know I'm on the bottom and these are the last time I'm gonna have numbers. So yeah, I think this is the part of the game where like if there's a time to make a move, this is probably it. So yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, Maya, when we get to your round. And I had one more question that I thought that I lost. But Bartley, anything that we didn't capture from your game? Oh, actually, I remember the question. Bartley, we actually see you get pretty personal and pretty vulnerable in the episode, a little bit about your life and kind of where you are. And I'm curious, I don't want to diminish that and kind of what you went through, but I'm curious if any of that was strategic, of trying to be vulnerable, to try and kind of pull at people's emotions to want to keep you around.
No, that wasn't strategic. That was just me being me. I mean, I think I actually was sharing a lot about myself throughout the entire game. And I think kind of going back to pre-merge, we were pretty open from Nebby with Sarah, Amelia, Tim, and I. And we shared a lot of like personal stuff. And in part, that's part of the reason why Tim felt like he should go, is because we were so open with each other. But no, it was not strategic. I would not use that for a strategic purpose. There was a very hard anniversary while I was out there, and the night before really fucking sucked. And I was just feeling very vulnerable in the moment.
Yeah. Good. Cool. Yeah, I was just curious because I think Sarah, you mentioned at some point like Bartley had like a little bit of like a nice, I don't even know if it made the episode, but I remember you saying like Bartley had like a nice moment, and like I'm worried like he's picking up momentum with that. So I was just curious if that was at all strategy. Anything that we missed from your game, Bartley, that didn't make the episodes? Anything you want to share or touch on?
I like just didn't read stuff. Like I was pretty flighty. Like when I went to the boxes, I don't think I even read that I could lose my vote. And I even didn't read the thing that I won. And I remember production was like, you need to finish reading it, because I picked, this will be funny. I picked short-term Outlast because I wanted to like, whatever, like I got to get through this small tribe. And the caveat on that advantage was that it couldn't be played on a tribe of 4 or less. Well, I was on a tribe of 3. And so short-term Outlast, it was not. I'm a little bitter about that too. But yeah, no, I just like never read anything. I just like, I just flew by the seat of my pants. I was definitely a first timer, and I feel like I've learned a lot from this experience. So
Yeah, we all play our second, third, fourth, sixth games differently than our first. For sure. Yeah, it does seem, Bartley, like you hit up against most of the production issues. We're all pointed at Bartley for some reason. Yeah, that was something, as we really try to vet every advantage we put in those boxes, we try to make sure that we never set any advantage up where it could actually break the game, right? So the exact scenario you were excited about where you could decide who goes home was the scenario we were trying to avoid, right? So like, being on a 3-person tribe, if you take 2 out, that means there's only 1 person left. And the big concern was, what if they have an idol? Right. And so we were like, we can't ever have that happen. So we have to put a kind of a limit on it. But it allows you to use it later. So like, everything happens for a reason, right? Cool. All right. So then we go to, oh my gosh, I have to remember where we are. We go to this past episode. Oh, well, when this airs, that'll be different. I'll edit this part out. Don't worry. So then we get to the challenge right at Tribal Council. So Sarah, I'm curious if you think that not having the ability to go back to Tribal and debrief on what just happened impacts the round, and not kind of having a little bit of that break before the challenge. Do you think that had a big impact on your round?
I think so. I mean, especially since like my number 1 was voted out. He was Gonzo. I think so. I hate having those moments where you don't get to go back to tribe, even just if you get a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be like, an hour, but just like a little time just to kind of, take a deep breath, process, and then move on with your day. So I think it definitely did affect my ability in that challenge.
Yeah. Maya, I have to ask if you've been practicing darts since you left the game at all.
I probably should, because watching that back, I was like, wow, I missed so many times. Like, I got lucky with how far I went in that challenge because I kept missing.
It was really funny. I loved your reactions. Like every time you'd miss, it was such good TV. Hannah, I have to say, Sarah, the fact that you took out Hannah like in 3 turns in a row, I thought was amazing. Like, do you play darts? Are you a darts person?
No, I'm not.
And then she came for me twice too.
I think half the time I threw the darts, they weren't hitting who I was aiming for.
Yeah,
honestly. And it's funny because like any of those kind of games, like any like bar games or like bowling, I'm either really bad at or good at.
Yeah,
but I don't try. Just happen.
Yeah, it was so funny. I didn't really remember a lot of what happened during that challenge outside of I remember it being really funny, and I couldn't remember why. And like between you, like it looks like you were just like out for Hannah because you're like bam, bam, bam. Andy hits himself. Maya can't hit the board. People keep hitting Bobby's benches, and he was upset about it. Like I just remember it was such a good challenge, and I just never expected that. So it was just, it was pretty wild. So Stephanie wins immunity. We go back to camp. And I think one of the things that was most interesting to me about the round was kind of Peter exposing the Wetu group as like, hey, y'all, like this is what actually was happening. And Sarah, I'm curious if that was really the first time you kind of made the connection that the Wetu group was sticking together, or if that was if you kind of had an inkling that was going on.
I think I had an inkling that there was people who were aligned that I wasn't necessarily privy to, but that was probably the really time where I'm like, oh, that makes sense now, and kind of really put the pieces together at that point. I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that that wasn't clocked sooner. And I when Bartley gets back, I'll ask him, because the Chelsea vote, I think again, like that is the moment where that group goes. And so that was like the only real time that group gets hit. you know, like Maya's always a name, but never the vote, right? And I think people are worried about Andy, and people clock Rachel as a threat. But like, you know, it was just interesting how well I think that group navigates the back half of the game, and find ways to kind of keep everybody thinking the options are open, but that group keeps kind of moving forward, which I thought was really, really interesting. And so Steph wins immunity. Maya, do you think Steph needed it that round? Like, do you think, you know, who was on the radar, do you think, that probably could have used it that didn't have it?
Peter, 100%. He definitely needed it. And he was first out of the challenge. So I'm honestly pretty surprised that Peter survived that round. And I think it's actually because of me. I actually swayed the vote towards Sarah because, I don't know, she made that final 2 with me in the challenge, and I just didn't know how much to believe it. I felt like both her and Bartley, you know, were backed in a corner and we're trying to figure out paths forward anywhere possible. And seeing that I was on the outside of Wetu/Poda, that I was an easy way to go. And so I just like wasn't sure how much to believe it. Again, as I've said before, I wish I went with it. But you know, I steered it off of Peter because I really wanted Wetu to work. I still wanted to hold on to that faith of Wetu because we bonded so hard when we were there together. And so I ended up swaying it off of Peter, which was crazy, but he definitely needed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting how like Peter goes into that round almost kind of like he knows he's dead, right? Like he kind of, you know, basically just says like, I don't care anymore. I'm going to blow up everybody's games and I'm going to vote for Maya, and like, you guys do whatever you want to do. Right. Like that's kind of his attitude going into the game, or into that round. So yeah, I was a little, and you kind of just explained it, Maya, but why kind of that was the way that you chose to kind of sway the vote. But you just kind of answered that. So Bartley, what was I gonna ask you? Oh, we talked a little bit while you stepped away, around how the Wetu group kind of found the right ways to navigate through the kind of end game together without, I think, being just kind of too obvious that they were kind of working in that capacity. But you were actually one of the few people I felt like we see this throughout the episodes where you're like, Nebby hasn't had a number advantage. Why are we screwing ourselves? Like, why do we keep like taking these out? So I'm just curious if you had clocked kind of that Wetu group, or if Peter and Rachel kind of fooled you well enough that you didn't see that cluster kind of being as tight as it was.
I think I definitely clocked Rachel was good with them. I think I was hoping that Peter would fracture off. But yeah, I mean, that it was an uphill battle for anyone that wasn't on that Wetu tribe. So
yeah. Sarah, anything about that round that you wish you had done differently? I think, you know, the avenue that you went was the right way, right? Like Peter was obviously a hot mess that round, so that's like the obvious path to go. But anything that you could have done differently, was it truly a surprise to you? It seems, I think in your exit interview, you say it was a surprise.
Like a surprise that I won?
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily felt surprised. I think I had hope. But I don't think that it was a surprise because I think I knew that like the chances of me getting very much further was going to not be the easiest road. But I did feel that, I think in my head, that keeping me around was a smarter choice for some people's games, just because if everyone was so connected, you need sometimes that person on the outside to break that up to get further. So I do think that if I were in the game, I think other people would have gotten further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you did say that. And I'm curious how, I think this is true because I also know you as a player as we played together, but like, I think you were pretty earnest about wanting the ladies to all work together, right? Like that seems, I don't think that was just like your pitch to kind of save yourself. That felt like a very earnest, like it would be really cool to have the final five be all of us, right? Was that was your plan? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, one of the reasons that was too was I just was, and if anybody was paying attention to CYS, the one that I was on prod for, it was a all female 5. So I had a little inspiration where I was like, oh, that would be really cool to be part of. And I'm usually somebody who, I think a lot of women feel like this playing games is we don't always want to trust each other for some really weird reason. But I really wanted to in this game to work with more females. It just didn't end up working out that way. But, you know, I feel like usually what you think before a game is usually always different than when you're actually playing. So,
Oh, yeah, definely. I remember going into Real Foot being like, I'm not going to vote out any women. And
yeah.
and then I voted for mostly women that game. It was bad. Anyways. Yeah. Anything else about your game, Sarah, that we missed that we didn't see in the episodes that you wanna share?
Nothing I can think of. No.
Cool. Great. All right, and then we head into our final 6th round. We have Bo Diddley. So this is kind of a classic challenge. I won't say the real show, but I'll where you're balancing a ball on a bow. What was it like for you kind of playing kind of a challenge you've seen on television?
Yeah, it was really cool to be able to try it. I mean, I was pretty stable for the most part. And I felt good about it because I know I'm good at balance and endurance. So I was like, I won that last challenge. I could hopefully do it again. And I was pretty good up until you made us go to one hand. And then it was like, well, it's all going down. It was really hard to survive after that because it was just like, how long can I last before other people drop? And mine just flopped off. But yeah, I think it was really interesting that the last 2 people left in that challenge were me and Peter, because I think whoever didn't win was going home out of those 2.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what it seems. And I do also think we didn't touch on it too much, but as people were kind of lining up for the last tribal council, Rachel finds an idol in the stump, right? So she now has 2 idols that are quite public. Everybody knows about them. And while she says, I'm going to play it, I'm going to play it, I'm going to play it, she doesn't. So she walks into the final 6 with 2 idols. And I think that, you know, it's so interesting is in the episode where Sarah goes, you see you and Andy and Stephanie, and Andy's like, we're not breaking. It's us 3. It's us 3. We can't break. They have to break, right? And I think, you know, the hard part is those 2 idols and how do they navigate around? How do you navigate around those idols? Does Rachel use one for herself and one for Hannah? And, you know, like how do you navigate the vote with those 2 idols in the mix, which I think ultimately ends up being kind of somewhat your demise. I think Stephanie and Andy are like, we've got to flip, right? Like we've got to cut Maya if we want to not be the ones to get kind of hit that round, right? So I was curious if that's kind of how you read that part of the game, or if how much of a surprise it was for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because Andy had just put in all of that work with me of like, this is going to be our final 3. We're going to stay POTA strong no matter what. And then we made it past the 7 and we were 3-3. And I was like, great, we are going to ride it out. And the fact that we both have overlaps with POTA and Wetu, we have the numbers. So Hannah's going. I was like, automatically Hannah's going. And so I wasn't even as worried about Rachel's 2 idols. I mean, that was hard to be. I was like, okay, Rachel's not going. But Hannah had that advantage from the Outplay Outlast journey, where it was about like, you're able to switch your vote from what you voted originally. And the last time you could use it was final 6. So I was worried about that. I was like, why is no one talking about this advantage? What if she plays it? Because we're all voting Hannah, right? Was how I was feeling. So I was like, why is nobody talking about the possibility of her playing that advantage? And then we're screwed.
Right.
And so I guess I felt so assured by Andy in that last round that I didn't feel I needed to reiterate it. But I guess I really should have reiterated, like, the only way POTA gets to the end is if we commit together right now.
Right.
And I wish I had reiterated that statement, and maybe they would have confirmed their commitment to me, and then we could have made it to the end, and that would have been a cool arc for us to have. But yeah, unfortunately, I was just so set on POTA's strong, Wetu's strong, Hannah's got to go.
Right. And you've alluded to it a couple times tonight, but you know, you mentioned your regret about not utilizing Bartley and Sarah when you had the chance. Kind of looking back, would you kind of tell me more about that? Like, what do you wish you had done?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's apparent that Wetu had a lot of control over the merge, but at the end of the day, I was proven time and time again, I was on the bottom of that. I was constantly not chosen and not prioritized and not seen as an equal in that relationship. And so I just wish I had gone with people that showed me more loyalty than they did. And that was Bartley and Sarah. They had showed me more loyalty than any of the Wetus ever did, to be honest. And so I just wish I had played my own game rather than getting so stuck in my head about alliances I made previously. I was just so scared of the risks of it. And I'm known to play more safe games where in the past I've played from the top and I've been in the majority alliance, and this was very new to me to be like at the bottom. So it was hard for me to like play that kind of angle. And I just wish I'd played a more independent game rather than like following other people's lead.
Gotcha. Anything else about your game that we missed that didn't make the cameras or the episodes, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think as other people have said before, it's a big learning experience. I've learned a lot. After every episode, I've written down notes as to how I can do better in my next game. Because I just really want to be a better player. So one of those things is like, don't be afraid to flip. Don't be afraid to like change things up. Because I feel like I got really stuck in those alliances and prioritized other people's games over mine. So yeah, just I had a great time, and thank you, Justin, for everything. It was awesome. And yeah, I hope to come out of this a better player.
Awesome. All right, so we'll just wrap up with like a quick lightning round of a couple of last questions. So we'll start with, what was your favorite tribal challenge? So what was your favorite tribal challenge? We'll start with Matt. We haven't heard from you in a little while.
I'm going to say the one where we're on the cubes and the boards. I felt really bonded with my group, especially Bartley, who was up against me. We felt really bonded, and it was like good teamwork. That was the most exciting for me.
Bartley, how about for you?
I say the same challenge. I thought we worked really well together, and Matt and I were like snuggling a little bit up on those boxes. And I was kind of living for that moment just a little bit, but he reaches around and you see that wedding ring in the clip. So,
Sarah, how about you?
I did really love that challenge with the blocks. I thought it was like we worked so well together doing that, and we were also just killing it. So that was pretty great. But also me and Bartley taking on that challenge and winning and really getting through to that. I think that one might have been like, those are two very close for me.
Maya.
I would say the same challenge that Sarah said, where you had two representatives. Wetu, we had kept pushing and pushing, and this was like, we felt like the last chance for us to all get to the merge. And it was me and Steph. And look, I love Steph a lot. She's awesome, but she was panicking that entire time, and she kept worrying about this one little piece. that ended up being on the ground. So she was not being very helpful. And I felt like I did a lot of that puzzle myself. And so I felt really good to win that for the tribe.
Yeah, that was fun. There was a part right before the challenge when I think you were determining who was doing it. I remember Stephanie being like, "We're gonna do it. We're gonna prove this, Maya. We're gonna prove our worth." And I wish we caught it on camera because it was so good. Because I think it had to be either you. Was it you?
It was me, Stephanie, and Andy that were
Andy,
eligible to do it.
Right. Yeah, and again, that's like such an interesting portion of the game. And we talked a little bit about like just like how these little moments of kind of luck or choice kind of define the game because because Jacob, Matt, and Jeff do the challenge the night before, then Meg and Hannah have to do the challenge the next day. And like if those dynamics are changed, does any of the outcomes change differently, right? So like I've chatted with Jacob a little bit about this in the roundtable, right? Like he didn't have his fate in his own hands. And I was like, had you made a different choice about who's doing the challenge, like maybe it would have been different, who knows? But yeah, that was a cool kind of portion of the game, kind of just based on the choices made. Cool. All right. What was your lowest low? Like think of what moment was your lowest low. We'll go backwards. So we'll start with Maya.
Yeah, that one's easy. When I wasn't chosen for the reward, I just felt like slapped in the face by Andy and Poda.
You really wanted Subway, right? That was...
Yeah, that's totally it. Not the symbolism of it at all.
Sarah, how about for you? Lowest low?
It was probably when we had just lost and we were told in the middle of the night that we had to go do this challenge that we knew we couldn't win. I was so mad. I was getting pretty feisty. So,
Bartley?
The night that before I got voted out, where I just wrapped myself in a tarp. I just really got in my head and it went to a really dark place.
Matt, how about for you?
I think that pre-merge vote where Meg goes out, that I thought I was on top of the world, and then she goes, and I was like, "Oh, damn, this game is not where I thought it was." I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah. Last question. Looking back on the episodes, is there anything what's like the biggest surprise, either the moment or the person that's surprising you the most? I'll just go random. We'll start with Sarah. Anything after watching the episodes that kind of surprised you, either a player or a move or a moment?
I'll say I really enjoyed watching Chelsea's confessionals. There was so much insight that she had on the game that I would have never known like during the game. So it was really fun to really watch her and her thoughts pre that.
Cool. Bartley?
Just watching back any time that Stephanie and I have a conversation has been really like entertaining for me because it's like gaslights me the whole time. Like from the get-go, I'm like, "Oh, are you the party girl?" And she's like, "What? No. Yes, you are, girl. You are the party girl."
Maya, how about for you?
I guess like the interdynamics of Poda / Wetu and how like I thought I was more in it than I was. Just seeing those relationships and how intertwined they were, especially Rachel and Andy, which they knew each other. But I truly did not see that coming. So yeah.
Yes. Of course, the one other relationship that was pre-existing was another Andy relationship. Yeah, so Andy was a producer on a game that Rachel played years ago. And we as a casting team felt like, they hadn't played a game together. They like roughly knew each other. And what's funny is like, we were all kind of joking. We didn't even know if Rachel would remember him and it was the reason it's a joke is because during that season of Survival Challenge, which I played with her, she couldn't remember anyone's name. And it's like a long running joke that she forgets people's names and stuff, which we see a little bit in Outlast as well. But yeah, that was the other little bit of pre-existing relationship we had in this game. Matt, how about for you?
I don't know if you captured this, but Trey I picked up on his intensity, how much he loved the game, and I was really surprised he was the first one out because I saw him as a major threat just on the other tribe, and he was so fast. He was so like, I don't know, just this electricity coming from him. He was an incredible player, and Val too. She was so savvy, so savvy.
Yeah, we had an incredibly strong cast that like every time someone went home, it was really hard, right? Like, you know, even the folks that didn't have a ton of experience and, you know, just everyone was really fun to watch and fun to have a part of it. And yeah. All right. Last question. When you look back, like what is the one moment that kind of stands out to you, or the one moment that kind of summarizes your Outlast 2023 experience? So like what's the one thing you look back on and like that's the thing I remember most? I'll start with, we'll go in order this time, so we'll go Matt first.
I'm just gonna love that Nebby 2.0 vote out where I'm crying about Jacob and my alliance, just like alliance mates blow up and my game is a mess. But that's what I love. I love the dramatic conflict. What are you going to do as a human in a stressful situation? It was really cool to be in that.
All right. Bartley.
Winning that challenge with Sarah, I would say, was like my favorite part. It wasn't my favorite challenge because the stakes sucked, but it was awesome, just the two of us to win it, and we won by a lot. And then to sit and just enjoy our Dunkin' Donuts sponsored by was great.
Yes, Matt, we're actively using your plug to try to get a Dunks sponsorship next year. So thanks for that. Sarah, how about you?
Same. I mean, it's also like the fact of being in a game, being all the way on the bottom, being like, I have no shot here, and then just having this fire rise up inside of you to win something, and then for us to enjoy our Dunkin' Donuts and our polar seltzers as well. You know, all good things. That was just a great moment. It was a great feeling, and it was also one of those things like Survivor bucket list check type stuff too.
Yeah. Maya, how about for you?
I mean, winning immunity was really awesome for me. But I will also say the auction was a dream come true for me as well. I really wanted to do a Survivor auction, and so I was happy to get to do it and actually really want the food. You know what I mean? Like I didn't realize how much gravity it held until I was doing it.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate all of you being a part of the roundtable. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to say before we close? Last chance. Otherwise, it all goes to die in the interwebs.
I just want to say thank you, Justin, for organizing this. It's awesome to be able to talk about it again and give insight that wasn't necessarily covered in the episode. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I think we do our best, right, to tell the story the best we can with the footage we have. I know we don't capture everything. That's one of the hard parts, but also some of the cool parts of the game is the stuff that we don't see or we don't capture. And yeah, we do our best. And I would also just say, right, like these are all humans, right? These are all humans, and who they play in the game isn't necessarily who they are in the real world. So, right, like give everybody a little bit of grace, give everybody a little bit of love. They come in to play this game and you know make some decisions, and we can't always agree with them all. We don't necessarily always like things that happen, but we obviously appreciate you all being there and being at the mercy of our screens, and giving us something cool to watch. So thank you all. Anything else? Cool. Oh, Bartley came
Something else. So I guess, you know, it's never come up, but I applied for season 1 and I didn't get it. So I guess I would just say to anyone who like maybe applied this past go around, because I know there's a lot of applications, like if you didn't make it for 2024, like apply again, because you might get the opportunity and it's an awesome one.
Thank you for that. Yes, we obviously our casting pool is growing every season. And you know, we we ask people to be alternates, and we do our best to assemble a cast that has a lot of diversity, has a lot of representation, and we still work very hard to at least cast people who have never played a game together before and are not like known besties or related, right? I don't think we're ever going to avoid all pre-game relationships. It's just so hard, but we do our very, very best. And the more people that apply, the more opportunity we have to do that. So I do encourage you all to apply. And yeah, if you didn't make it this round, keep applying. We are, we will be around for a while, I think, I hope. So hopefully lots of opportunities to play. I'll just lightly plug that I do think our 2024 game and cast will be pretty amazing. We have some really cool concepts coming up, and we have a great, great cast. And I will also say we have great alternates in the event anybody can't play. So that's really cool. And I will say, I think we had 6 alternates play 2023. I don't know if you were all aware of that, but there were quite a few alternates in the mix of your game. Whereas in season 1, we had 0. We didn't have to ask for any. So it was quite a change for us. So yeah, fingers crossed, no alternates this year. But if we do, we also have some great, great alternates that if they're not cast this year, maybe in the future. So I appreciate you saying that, Bartley. Yeah, I think, and I would also say I feel like everything happens for a reason. So whatever the reasons are, Bartley, you were meant to be on this cast and to play in that year, that season, right? So yeah, I'm a strong believer in that. Yeah. So all right. Well, with that, I will wrap this tonight. Thank you all so much. And I'll just say really quickly, we are our finale will be this Sunday, where we'll see the final 5 battle it out for the title of the second ever Outlast champion. So definitely tune in for that. And then my hope is to have a roundtable with that group, and then potentially a mini reunion with everybody welcome to come back to chat as a big group. So more to come on that as well. But with that, we'll say good night.